One of the world's largest airlines just took a next step into the future as Emirates has officially launched their A350, a plane that we've been expecting for about 5 years. The date of the inaugural shuffled around a bit, but today it finally flew from Dubai to Edinburgh, Scotland, where we were fortunate enough to join on the experience. We'll look at the economy class experience, the whole cabin, why Emirates chose the A350, and the delivery issues they had, so use those timestamps to find what you're looking for, and remember to hit that subscribe button with post notifications on. I arrived to Dubai about 12 hours before the flight on a connection and actually spent the night in the terminal. Emirates' terminal in Dubai has a check-in wing for first and business class and then a separate one for economy class, which is where we're headed. But I have covered the other terminal previously if you want to check that out. They've made some minor renovations to the decor in here, but it can get chaotic with just the sheer amount of people departing at one time, considering half of their fleet is double-decker A380s. They encourage you to use the self-service kiosks if you aren't checking a bag, although US and UK flights don't always work for that. If you are checking a bag, you better have packed some patience because it will take a while. Off at the departure gates, the line for immigration and security took about 45 minutes, and then you find your concourse A, B, or C. As we're in the B gates, there's no train required, just up the escalator. Dubai's terminal is iconic. Similar to the check-in area, I find it to be a bit outdated, but it is definitely grand. Perhaps the biggest bummer is that the setup puts the windows so dang far away that it's impossible to get clear photos, but there's still plenty of natural light for some plane spotting, dining, or even resting. Or maybe you just want to take in the architecture of this place. I instead checked into the hotel that's above the concourse and lounges. It was about $250 for 6 hours, which was crazy, and I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been traveling for 50 hours straight with no breaks prior to this. I wish I had more time, but it's definitely convenient. When I woke up, the gate had been announced, which of course meant I had to get over there and take some pictures, through the dotted windows, mind you. As they shined the aircraft and windows for this inaugural, it sat by as media walked around and got their content. Professional media, more professional than I. It's unfortunate because when Hawaiian Airlines inaugurated their 787, any type of media was allowed on board to get their cabin shots. We just had to clear before they did their security checks prior to boarding. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed on until general boarding. It still looked great from here with the refreshed livery and tail fin, but the winglets were my favorite. The A350 has gorgeous winglets in general, but the Emirates look might be my new favorite, with the flag on the inside and the red Emirates logo on the outside. Gate B11 would be ours today, but if they didn't put that on the boarding pass, there'd be no way of knowing. Not only were the signs not updated with Edinburgh until later, but there was no signs of fanfare. No balloons, no posters, no food, no music, nothing. I even asked the gate agent if we could expect any sort of celebrations before boarding, and she looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. I mean, come on, Emirates, what are we doing here? I can tell you that at least a quarter of the people here were here for the new airplane, but you didn't really give them any sort of special memories before boarding. I mean, just look at the video we covered last year with the Hawaiian 787 inaugural. That is how you pull off a new aircraft inaugural. After boarding, we went down to a holding area with restrooms and waited for the green light to board after they went through everyone's bags and swabbed their hands, waist, and shoes. Some more intense security than times when I've had the quadruple S. We may be in economy class today, but that doesn't mean we can't take a gander at each cabin class offered on this aircraft, beginning with business class, as Emirates decided not to put first class in these things, which comes with some drama we'll chat about later. The business class comes in a 1-2-1 setup and is essentially the same as the new A380 business class that we covered last year. If you are sitting alone, you'll want the even-numbered window seats, which have more privacy. But if you're traveling with someone, you'll want an odd-numbered middle seat, as they're closer to each other and have more privacy from the aisle. Then is the premium economy, a product I've been wanting to try with Emirates for a while now. With only 21 seats, it's a fairly small cabin, smaller than the other airlines they compete with. And last but not least is the economy class, where we will be sitting. Emirates went with the A350 standard of 333 in economy with 259 seats, which puts the capacity at the lowest in their fleet besides the rare 777-200s. They also stuck with the light blue and brown cabin colors that's been used for quite some time now. These colors reflect more light so the whole cabin feels lighter and therefore artificially larger. Back to row 36 where I'll be on the right side window. Not kidding, it was like the second to last window seat available when I booked. These seats sport an adjustable headrest with Emirates flap that can be replaced after each customer, and I found the seat cushion to be a bit on the hard side. The armrest has the seat label and is below the window. Emirates has added electric window shades from Airblade for every seat, whereas in the A380, for example, it was only in the upper deck. They did use large entertainment screens. At 13.3 inches, they're the same screens as premium economy. And it offers USB A and C charging. The tray table folds out below that, and they've added a wood effect that Emirates has become famous for, like around the windows or bulkheads, to name a couple examples. The seatback pocket below that is now mesh instead of just fabric. This makes it harder to forget things, although they can only hold like a single pebble. Joking, kinda, but seriously, you can't open it that far, so I could only fit my phone or the headphones, but not both, and certainly not anything else. They did add a water bottle holder down here, which you may recall that previous Emirates aircraft had this on the tray table, but they've moved it down here now, although I used it for holding chargers instead since they couldn't fit in the main pocket. Under your seat, if your bag is put up, there's a good amount of space. The biggest problem, however, there may not be IFE screen boxes down here, but the window seats in economy class until row 45 have this structural bar here. You can kind of use it as a footrest, but it isn't really space for storage with that there. Plus, unless I'm blind, there's also no universal charging ports, so my laptop died in the flight. Kind of inexcusable for a brand new long-haul aircraft, but maybe I'm just missing something. At least the knee space is fairly good, with 32 inches of pitch, putting it at the top end of average for international economy, although the bulkheads do have extra space. The best thing though, overhead air vents. That alone sells me on this airplane. Each passenger was also given a small but firm pillow, and this blanket that was super fuzzy, albeit a little small. Then was headphones, and I know you're thinking, oh wow, over-ear headphones in economy, and you're not entirely wrong, but these things are honestly some of the least comfortable headphones I've ever used, and they aren't even noise canceling, they just aren't earbuds. We also got the only inaugural goodie for the time being, a remove before flight keychain with an Emirates A350 on the back. It doesn't even say inaugural. I know my standards are high for inaugurals at this point, but come on guys, you've got the money to do something great, and this is all you give? Hawaiian, Iberia, and Iceland Air outdid you, and those carriers are basically bankrupt. If you didn't know, Emirates loves their large aircraft. They've made the A380 work because they had so many that it was no longer a sub-fleet, but it was still inefficient and lacked the load factor on certain routes. Currently, with an all A380 and 777 fleet, the aviation world is getting more efficient, and Emirates' fleet had to as well. The airline's been criticized for using A380s on hour-long flights when a smaller aircraft could fly the route more efficiently, especially when newer and different aircraft would be better optimized on those routes. Enter stage right Mr. A350, who will likely replace the A380 on routes where they can't fill the upper deck, since that's where the profit is. The 777X is also on the way to replace the aging 777s, but that has its own, even worse delays. So why no narrowbodies though? Largely because of their business model with one hub and spoke, so everyone from everywhere has to be brought to Dubai and then out to their next step. Although Qatar and Etihad do the same thing, but do put narrowbodies on shorter and thinner routes. Although I have a hunch that Emirates doesn't like narrowbodies because there's less space for the luxury they want to put. Honestly, I feel that Emirates needed the A380s to help their historic boom of growth, but now that things are more or less steady operationally over there, these giant aircraft aren't always necessary. So in 2019, Emirates and Airbus talked to swap existing A380 orders to A350s. This would end the A380 program, as Emirates' 72 on order were the last of the type, as Airbus had already persuaded another unnamed A380 order to A350s. Emirates placed their order that year for 40 A330neos and 30 A350s, later adding 15 more, with deliveries planned for 2023 but pushed back to 2024 post-COVID. Supposed to be complete by 2028 at least. All these A350s were to be in the 900 type, as Emirates' president was disillusioned with the engines on the 1000s. The first 15 of these A350s will also not have crew rest facilities, which limits the range to less than 12 hours, so we'll have to wait for the second round of aircraft before we see these in the Western Hemisphere. We took off and spent the first couple hours just flying over Iran, which is an absolutely gorgeous country that I would love to visit and fly airlines from, if only the visa wasn't impossible to get as an American. After departure, we did get one more inaugural goodie, a menu. It listed the choices for 2 meals, but also branded with the inaugural tag at the top, and the choice to buy a 200ml champagne bottle for $25 US. We'll get a bigger meal right after takeoff with 2 choices for the main course and dessert, and then a smaller snack before arrival that were much more Scottish sounding. We didn't actually get that meal until we were just under 2 hours into the 8-hour flight, but when it did get here, I chose to get a 7-Up as I was borderline sick from my travels this trip. Then I decided on the butter chicken main course, where it all came on one tray. The butter chicken with cumin rice and cashew garnish, as they say. Look at that garnish. Along with that was cheese and crackers, butter, and dark chocolate. There was a side of Scottish smoked salmon with lemon and potato salad, and a strawberry cheesecake with berry compote for a dessert, plus a bottle of water, Scottish shortbread cookie, and bread roll with sour cream crackers. Plus a big bonus for metal branded silverware in economy. After collecting the trays, they then brought a cart with tea and coffee to the cabin to those who wanted some. I know that economy meals are fairly boring around the world, but Emirates really goes above and beyond. It's just great to see such tasty options and so much food that there's some business classes that don't have meals to this standard. Then for setting up the bed, or whatever you want to call it, I first wanted to lower those window shades. You can press the button and it drops all the way down, or you can hold it and release it when you want it to stop. Unfortunately, mine and a few other window shades around me stopped working intermittently throughout the flight, so it's a new piece of equipment with a learning curve attached to it. It also adorns the tree that's seen on bulkheads, lavatories, lounges, etc. at Emirates now. This tree, known as the Goff tree, is an indigenous evergreen tree, and it's the national tree of the UAE that they're currently working to protect. Then reclining the seat, not only does the seat back move, but the bottom does as well. This way it doesn't have to recline you as far because it puts you at a different angle, although it does rob an inch or two of space for you tall folks. I found the headrest to be good enough without the pillow, unless leaning against the wall, although the blanket was nice to have, and coupled with the air vents, you could perfect your temperature. I did actually come to like the seat support bar as it was a footrest of sorts, or I could straddle it since my foot just barely fit through, although my other foot was admittedly cramped. Lastly, it's tough to see with the mood lighting on the daytime flight, but they added the lights to the ceiling to resemble stars. Honestly, it was extremely comfortable, one of the best seats I've had in economy for sleep, considering I just got out of a hotel room where I had slept a few hours, got on board, and still slept like a rock for about 4 hours. A lot of you are probably well aware of Emirates' famous in-flight entertainment system known as ICE, but what about the screens they chose for this aircraft? Emirates chose Thales' Avant entertainment system, which supplies 4K Samsung QLED HDR screens in every cabin and might contain every letter of the alphabet. These screens are 50% more reliable and 30% lighter. They're also more efficient, minimizing the electrical draw. Emirates will also be the launch customer for Thales' new Pulse power management technology, which will allow USB-C and A charging simultaneously without affecting the quality of entertainment, but also offering Bluetooth connectivity and built-in Wi-Fi. These screens play host to Emirates' world-renowned ICE system with over 5,000 titles and a ton of awards for the available content. We covered this in our Emirates video last year, but there's thousands of movies from around the world and TV shows with multiple full seasons. There's a ton of games, there's live TV, and some very handy flight information in addition to the map, such as the crew that was helping us out. For the Emirates Wi-Fi on these A350s, they chose Inmarsat, which uses specific satellite types to allow coverage at higher altitudes and over the Arctic, meaning that there should be no outage areas around the entire globe. Emirates is supposedly also the launch customer for HBC Plus, which allows for the use of multiple satellite connections and providers rather than just one network, allowing the aircraft to reach connections around the world. And the best part, it's 100% complimentary. But it was slow. And remember that whole no outage area thing? Well, it turns out that was just a lie. And here's to prove that this was actually taken during this flight. You'd figure they'd pick the fastest connection for the airplane rather than Wi-Fi that works about as well as when it first started showing up in airplanes. Honestly, I mostly just wanted to check and make sure that our flight was the most #1 tracked. Perhaps the biggest topic of discussion with these aircraft was whether or not they would have first class. Emirates has the world's most famous and widespread first class, and originally the plan was for Emirates to put first class seats in those later A350s. Since then, they've clarified that all A350s will sport the same 3-class interior with only business, premium economy, and economy. This is a strange change for Emirates since most airlines have already removed their first class, but Emirates has been adamant about keeping theirs, and even renovating the 777 product while maintaining by far the most first-class seats in the world. This doesn't mean Emirates is done with first class, as their 777Xs are planning to sport those game-changer first-class suites, which is why the decision to not put first class in the A350 just feels like Emirates doesn't value the type as highly. It will also make first-class journeys awkward, as previously you could fly to any destination, connect in Dubai, stay in the first-class experience on the next segment, but now you might fly 15 hours from the US to Dubai in first class, only to arrive and switch to a business class experience. Not even having the option, almost like a forced downgrade from the current offerings. The lavatories in here are top-notch. For economy standards, there's a ton of space. They keep that wood look to the toilet and counter face, and the countertop has a great marble slab look to it with great patterned backsplash and oversized sink. These sinks are great considering there's some labs where you still get water everywhere just by brushing your teeth or washing your hands. There's lotion and perfume so that you get off smelling fresh, and the door sports that same golf tree. They do have cups in here, but obviously the water isn't potable. No worries though, because they do have water taps around the cabin so that you can refill your water bottles with actually drinkable water from a cleanable surface. They did also come through the cabin with refreshments roughly once an hour, and the aft galley also has this little island in the middle. During mealtime, it's used to prep trays, but other than that, it's supposedly a place for mid-flight snacks and a place to hang out, although there isn't seatbelts, so don't expect to hang out there for all that long. Just under 2 hours from landing, we got our second meal service of the flight. This was one of the most quintessential British meals we could have got, kinda like economy class high tea, which is kind of an oxymoron. So of course I got 7-Up again. To eat, however, there was a pair of coronation chicken sandwiches, one on rye and one on white bread. There was a warmed scone, the cake-looking thing is the Scottish banoffee pie, and then we got clotted cream and jam for the scone. I feel like I'm letting down those Boston Harbor patriots from the 1700s by saying this, but I've come to like the finger foods that come with the afternoon tea. Now if only I can learn to like the tea itself. Under an hour from landing, the captain came on and said this.
His Highness Sheikh Ahmed bin Zayed Al Maktoum, who's the Chairman and Chief Executive of Emirates Airline, has asked the crew to present you a little certificate as a thank you for joining us today on this inaugural Emirates A350 flight from Dubai to Edinburgh.
We got one last thing honoring the inaugural. A nice certificate on behalf of the Sheikh with a place for your boarding pass to keep it as a memento. This was actually pretty cool. In addition, Emirates does offer free Polaroid photos on board. We did this last year on the Emirates A380 business class if you're interested in those, but I didn't get one today because I was sitting in kind of an awkward spot for one. New aircraft types can be frustrating to inaugurate. I mean, just look at the whole 777X debacle. Who even knows when we'll see them for real? Even the people that tell us don't actually know what it feels like. Airlines obviously want these new types as soon as possible since they have the newest tech and the best efficiency, but looking to book it as a passenger can also be tough. Just looking at this flight specifically, I cannot tell you how hard I worked to get on the flight. For those of you who are less familiar, the flight was originally supposed to happen on September 15th of 2024 to Bahrain. I had booked the original date in business class, obviously excited to try the new product. Then it got pushed back to November 4th and the destination changed to Edinburgh at this point, so I changed the booking to that day and paid a fare difference, but fortunately I was able to move to a window seat in business class. Supply chain issues caused Airbus to fall behind on items like engines and cabin equipment, delaying the inaugural to December 2nd, which I once again changed the flight to that day and paid another fare difference. The delivery was finally confirmed for October, and the inaugural was pushed back again to December 16th, and I changed the booking again paying a fare difference as I had now almost paid for the ticket twofold just to get in the new product. They finally got the aircraft in November and held an unveiling, but unfortunately my job got in the way of that event, plus I'm not quite important enough to get those invites. Emirates then rescheduled the inaugural to January 15th, but the system wouldn't let me rebook, I'm assuming because of the amount of changes I had made, but I was able to cancel the flight and rebook it as a new reservation. After their initial testing and training, they announced officially that the flight would occur on January 3rd, moving it up slightly. I scrambled to rebook the flight again, but by the time I got to it, not even a couple hours after the announcement was off, there was no more business class seats. One thing that frustrates me is that on these important flights, the airline will save seats for media to cover the inaugural, which makes sense, but it doesn't seem like they did that until January 3rd was confirmed. But I can't really blame them. I mean, I had just as much confidence in the delivery as they did, it seems. It's just the tough reality of it all. Emirates did actually inaugurate the Edinburgh flight as scheduled on November 4th, but with a 777 instead of the A350, since they'd already sold a ton of tickets for the route, so delaying the aircraft didn't delay the route. And in a seemingly random last-minute swap, Emirates flew the A350 on a no-revenue flight to Dammam on Christmas. It was most likely a test flight for ground and flight crew, so the Edinburgh flight could go smoothly, but still strange since there was no real fanfare or warning. The good thing is, I did get the money back from the business class ticket, but it's still an experience that I can't get back. I do wish airlines would make it possible to book the experience flights separately somehow, things like inaugurals. That way if someone's taking the flight specifically for the new route or aircraft and it gets changed, the airline can accommodate them better. I mean, there's still people who book inaugural flights inadvertently and don't care what plane they're on, but I don't know, it's just tricky. Don't get me wrong though, I'm still extremely grateful to be here for the experience. If anything, economy's fun because this is the experience that most people will have on this airplane, and I'm the first to experience that. Just a tad less cozy, but I think I'll live. Welcome to Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland and the airport that always looks like it's under construction, and possibly the least handicap friendly. If you recall, Airbus complained that they didn't get any sort of water cannon salute or fanfare for their inaugural to London. The UK said they just don't do that anymore, so I was super curious to see if they would do it for us, or if Airbus was correct and they're actually being picked on. Last year we did the JetBlue inaugural flight to Edinburgh, and this year brings another inaugural and another flight to Edinburgh. It's been a long time coming for the A350s of Emirates with multiple delays, but to be fair, it is nothing compared to the 777X, which is delayed by years instead of months. Gotta be honest though, I'm not sure how I feel about the product as a whole. Don't get me wrong, it looks great and brings the newest technology to the airline for the most part. There's a couple practical things that don't make sense to me. The lack of universal charging ports, or at the very least, the fact that I couldn't find them, is a big one. I know they wanted to save space under the seats by getting rid of the IFE packs, but that's basically a given these days. The in-seat storage also kinda sucks. I'm sure that pocket will stretch out over time, but I struggled to even get a phone in that pocket. That's the main reason I left my backpack at the seat, although between that and the awkward seat support, it made it a bit cramped. The lack of first class feels very non-Emirates to me as well. Other than that though, I think the hard product's great. Modern and with good amenities. The soft product was strong as usual at least. One of, or possibly the best meal I've ever had in economy class, a great combo of cuisines and top-tier quality. I mean, I'd pick this over some business class meals of airlines like LOT or Lufthansa. The crew was incredible, as always, but this one was even more so as Emirates hand selects the crews for inaugurals. Amazing entertainment as well, but the Wi-Fi is unfortunate. I was expecting much better coverage and speeds. Lastly, we've flown a fair share of inaugurals by now, so I have fairly high standards, but who doesn't love a good party? I just feel like Emirates really swung and missed with this one. I mean, why not get some balloons, first A350 posters, or maybe some cookies and snacks or music in the gate holding area? Just something, anything. We got that keychain and the menu with the special header, but other than that, if you weren't following the news, you'd have no clue this was even an inaugural. To be fair, I wonder if it's any better with new cities instead of new aircraft. Maybe we can find out together one day. So where will these A350s go if you want to try it out going forward? Obviously Edinburgh, but Kuwait and Bahrain will be added next week. Then Ahmedabad and Muscat in February, Bologna, Lyon, and Mumbai in March, and then most likely more destinations across the Middle East and India from there, plus some low-density European routes. What do you think about the product, however? What purpose do you see this airplane playing with Emirates? And if you had the chance to fly this or one of their other aircraft, which would you choose? Oh, and by the way, because people keep DMing me asking about it, I put my phone in Spanish because I've been using Duolingo for almost 2 years to learn Spanish and still feel like I haven't gotten better, so this is my way of forcing myself to work with Spanish. Let me know if you have any other tips for immersion, but until next Sunday, safe travels. I'll see y'all next time.